Lights Out, Chapter 57, Part 6. The men waited. Every few minutes, the MZBs would fire across the easement. Kurt told all the men on his side not to shoot back unless they had a definite target. No one could see anything except for an occasional muzzle flash. After a few minutes, fire was only coming from the invaders. Finally, the MZBs quit firing. A minute later, a voice came from the opposite camp. "You pigs! We know we got you outnumbered. Leave your guns where they are and come out, and we'll let you leave." "You have 1 minute," the voice said emphatically. It sounded confident, but Mark wondered if it was just bravado. And a minute to what? If they rush now, Kurt and Rob should have enough men to easily stop a charge. Of course, the MZBs didn't know that, did they? Kurt must have thought the same thing because he quickly passed the word that no one was to answer or shoot back unless the bastards charged. It was deathly quiet. Mark felt like he was a kid in a graveyard at midnight. The hair on the back of his neck was standing up. He knew the rush was coming. There was about the same number on each side. Under normal circumstances, the defenders would have the advantage. The attackers would have to cross the open ground, and 50 yards was a long way when you were being shot at. But how would the full auto weapons play into the scenario? Would they even the odds back up, or even tip them in the MZB's favor? He wished the guys Gunny was sending would get here. Having more rifles with sights that worked at night would help them a bunch. He could hear mumbling from the MZBs. Fortunately, the wind was still coming from their direction. Unfortunately, he couldn't make out what they were saying. He readied himself for the blitzkrieg. Would they come in one big group, or would they split up and attack from different directions? Either way, he tried to take out the guys with the machine guns first. He could hear his heart pounding in his ears. Suddenly, another voice yelled out from the other side. "Here they come," Mark said to himself. He thumbed the safety off of his big rifle and hugged it in tight to his shoulder as he looked through the scope. But the voice didn't say what he thought it would. It took his mind a second to register what his ears had heard. "Fuck you, Smitty. I ain't going over there to see if the motherfuckers left. You do it." "Me neither," another voice chimed in. Mark almost laughed out loud. He had worked himself up for nothing. It looked as if there was a little dissension in the MZB camp, and as Mark thought about it, he wasn't surprised. Why would they want to face an armed group when there were so many others who were easy pickings? Mark was almost surprised they hadn't retreated. The only reason they were probably still here was because of all their equipment and supplies were in the clearing. because all of their equipment and supplies were in the clearing. A few seconds later, the MZB leader called out with a different plan. "You pigs can just leave. We don't want no trouble from you. You just take your guns and go, and we'll call it even, okay?" No one answered. "Are you pigs fucking deaf? Leave. If you're still here in 15 minutes, we'll kill every one of you. Then we'll go find your own ladies and have fun before we kill them and the rest of your families. Just go on home and nobody else has to get hurt. You know you don't stand a chance against our assault rifle, so make it easy on yourselves. You now got 14 minutes and 45 seconds. It was so quiet that Mark could have sworn he could hear the tree he was behind growing. A second later, there was a tap on his shoulder. One of the men pointed back in the trees and whispered that Kurt wanted to see him. He wiggled backwards until he could get turned around without exposing himself. He crawled up to where Rob and Kurt were. "What do you think?" Kurt asked him. "I guess we could leave, but I don't like letting these guys go. No telling what kind of trouble they'll cause. Even if they leave us alone, somebody's going to have to deal with them," Mark answered. "I agree," Rob said. "So how do we handle this?" "Kurt, why don't you call FEMA and have them send some of their National Guard troops to mop up this mess?" "Didn't the FEMA guy tell you to call if you needed anything?" Mark asked. "I could do that, but I don't think it's a good choice. First, no telling how long it would take them to get here, if they could even find the place. Second, they killed our guys. No way do I want someone to let someone else clean this up. And last, and probably most important, I'm afraid that asking for help might set a bad precedent. I don't want to give Mr. FEMA any reason to think that we can't handle things on our own. The next thing you know, he thinks we need help blowing our noses and wiping our butts. I'd rather take care of this in-house. We could just wait for them to come out after us, Rob suggested. We should be able to take them out before they cross the opening, or we could go with the plan Mark set up when his guys get here. Well, let's see how many guys Gunny sends, Mark said. Normally, I think we could wait them out, but those full-auto rifles kind of worry me. They worry me too, Mark, Kurt said, but probably not for the same reason they bother you. Full auto isn't really as effective as aimed fire is. It's really hard to shoot accurately on automatic. But if these guys are smart, and thankfully they haven't shown any sign of that yet, they could use them for covering fire. If they could keep our heads down with them long enough to get their guys across the pipeline, it could get ugly for us. Close quarters is where full auto is an advantage, a huge advantage. Hey, Rob, the Silver Hills guys are here, someone whispered loudly.